Alright, so this will be the Silent Hill 2025 tier list, ranking all the games in the series. I have played just about every single game in the series. I replayed all of them recently on the stream, so now I'm doing an updated tier list for the new games that have come out, and maybe my opinions on some of the existing games has changed. Ooh, exciting. Exciting thing. The opinion video. Opinions in this economy. Yes, we replayed all of the games. We replayed all of the games recently, so I got some thoughts. Although first things first, I'm gonna immediately start this by dumping the mobile games into I just haven't played them. I haven't played Orphan, I haven't played The Escape, I haven't played Mobile 2 and 3. I think one of these is whatever. I haven't played these games. I don't know how. Like, you gotta work out mobile emulation for that, and I haven't done it yet. I've played... It looks real sad being like, I've played all the Silent Hill, and then there's 4 immediately in, like, the haven't played tier. I don't know how mobile emulation works. Get off my case. You can't get these anymore. Silent Hill 1. The A tier. But not the top team. Interesting. My opinion on this is relatively unchanged over the years. I really like Silent Hill 1. Silent Hill 1 is perhaps my favorite, like, game to play in general. It's definitely my favorite speedrun of all time. Like, it's a game that I have speedrun consistently for about a decade now, unbroken. I always come back to it eventually at some point. I very much like its vibes. For the PS1, it's really technically impressive, but also that technical boundary pushing is one of the things I think keeps it out of the S tier, because I'll be frank with you, I'm one of these people. Silent Hill 1 kinda runs like ass. It's a game with a surprisingly poor performance. And that like, impacts how the handling works, and in general, Silent Hill 1's tank controls are an acquired taste. Like, Harry walks with momentum. I find that makes the speedrun very interesting, but it makes the game sort of difficult to control in a casual way. Like, people have a hard time acclimating to Silent Hill 1, especially if you're used to instead classic Resident Evil. Silent Hill 1's like really hard to pick up on. But among its peers on the PlayStation 1, Silent Hill is easily one of the best games on the system, for sure. Like, there is a reason that among the tank control survival horror game trend, the only real, like, survivors of that in the public consciousness were Silent Hill and Resident Evil. There is a reason that it came out that way. There is very much a reason. And it's because Silent Hill 1's good. It's a good game. These are the uncontroversial ones. These are the uncontroversial ones. This is Play Novel. This one here, Silent Hill Play Novel. Play Novel's alright for what it is. It's a bit of a baffling release, is the thing. Like, do I want to go C or D? Like, it's not that worth going out of your way for, but for what it is, it's, like, fine. It's a visual novel adaptation of Silent Hill 1. And on that front, it's perfectly playable. There's nothing really wrong with it, but it's just sort of like, why? So why does this game exist? I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but again, it's just sort of a puzzling existence. It's a playable game. I don't think it has an English translation is the thing. Like, I've played it through in Japanese a couple of times, and like, it's the prose is I'm not like good at literary Japanese. Like, I'm trying to judge the writing of a game written in my second language. It's okay. I thought it was fine. It tries to convey like the tense atmosphere of Silent Hill. It's got some flowery descriptions of the town and the scenery and what have you. It's a visual novel. It's a visual novel. It is what it is. It's fine. Silent Hill 2, this game fucking sucks. It's the worst game ever. Nah, it's the best game ever. Silent Hill 2, baby. Silent Hill 2. Everyone loves Silent Hill 2. I also really like it. It's not my favorite game in the series, mind you. There is a certain other game that one belongs to. But Silent Hill 2 is one of the best remembered games of its type, and not for no reason. Like, the story, the theming, the way it's very fun to replay again and again, because you get like a different perspective on the events of the game. It has the great kind of story twist where it enhances the rest of the story. Like, it makes it more fun to replay with the knowledge you have from having finished it. That's a prized quality of storytelling twists. Because a lot of like not very good twist endings will have like a twist that deflates the overall experience. It makes replaying the game like not so fun. Silent Hill 2 has the good kind of twist that makes the game, like, even more enticing to run it back and play again. Silent Hill, very, very good. It also improves the controls quite significantly from Silent Hill 1, it should also be noted. Silent Hill 2 is a lot snappier, a lot easier to get a grip on. The thing I will say I think Silent Hill 2 is notably a bit weaker in is that I think the boss fights in Silent Hill 2 are, broadly speaking, a bit basic in their construction for the most part. They have a habit of just putting you in a room that's slightly small with a guy that's, like, slightly big. You know, Flesh Slips, it's two guys that are slightly big in a room that's slightly small. Abstract Daddy, it's one very big guy in a room that's entirely too small. The final boss fight against the dual Pyramid Head fight, really good atmosphere in that fight, mind you. The music's carrying that one tremendously, but it's also two guys in a room, in a square room, and you just sort of move away, and then you shoot them, and then you move away. Like, I don't know, that's just how all Silent Hill boss fights work for some reason. So it's how all boss fights in Silent Hill 2 work for some reason. Like, it doesn't serve the game terribly, but it's a bit, I don't know, it's like all of them. They're all like that. Yeah, but the room in the Pyramid Head fight's not as small as the other ones. It's a little bigger. And the very first boss fight is Pyramid Head in like an L-shaped room, which again is just a smidge small. That seems to be like, we need a boss fight. Slightly cramped room. Got it. Genius. Still a really good game though. This is me like trying to find a thing to complain about. But meanwhile, Silent Hill 3, this game watered my crops, changed my life, and made me a horrible, horrible, obsessive individual with survival. I really like Silent... There are very few things I don't like about Silent Hill 3. I think it looks the best by far. I think it has the best voice acting by a mile. The cutscene direction is still really strong to this very day. Like, it still looks really good, considering it's a PS2 game that came out, like, way back when. And it controls so much smoother. Like, you can actually do circle strafing in Silent Hill 3 relatively fluidly. There's a variety of weapons. Like, there's a reason to use a melee weapon when you don't have ammo in Silent Hill 3. So it's occasionally stronger. There's the block mechanic. I think it actually does exist in Silent Hill 2, but it's really hard to utilize effectively. Like, there's a combat system. You can block an attack and punish it. If you bait the enemy into an attack, block it, they're negative on block, like fighting game. Wow! It's like, there's actually like a system to it in Silent Hill 3. But then it loses all of the goodwill and plummets all the way off the board because it's got the Slurper enemy in it, who burned my crops and ruined my life. But no, Silent Hill 3 is still really good. I hate Slurpers though. The blocking doesn't work against them, they hit low. Bastards, I hate them. I hate Slurpers. Leave me alone. Yeah, Silent Hill 3 is definitely, like, my favorite game in this series by a landslide. I like it. I have, like, woefully few things that I think are wrong with it. That list is, like, fuck Slurpers. Fuck them, seriously. And the subway's kind of confusing on a first playthrough. Like, I feel like everyone gets lost in the subway because everything kind of looks the same. I recall the first time I played the game getting really turned around in the subway, like, many, many times. Like, I'm used to it now. I could walk through the place blindfolded, but yeah, how many of you guys got lost trying to go through the subway in Silent Hill 3? Because I definitely got lost going through the subway in Silent Hill 3 the first time. Like, it's easy for me to forget because I haven't been confused about it in a very long time, but I try to hang on to the memory that the first time I played it, I definitely got, like, super lost there. It's a pretty short area, but it feels longer because of how you spend so much time being confused and then, like, getting ran over by accident. Because I, walked too far in that direction, got hit by the train. Silent Hill 4. This is the controversial one, because this game definitely has its fans, and I think as far as, like, art direction and general vibes go, it's definitely, like, still recognizably a Silent Hill game. However, I have to admit, follow my heart, be true to true, I fucking hate playing Silent Hill 4, dude. I don't enjoy playing Silent Hill 4 at all. I find that game excruciatingly irritating. It does have some good music. Like, I do, again, in terms of art direction and vibes, it is recognizably still a game in the Silent Hill franchise, but aside from that, I hate just about everything about it. I find the story boring because the characters are boring. The controls are weirdly shit. he turns in such a wide arc. It's so hard to get that man to go where the hell you want to go. I hate playing Silent Hill 4. Fighting everything is so awkward. There's like this weird charge meter where you're fully invincible and it's like full, so you can walk forward and do like the big axe swing and you have like 9 full seconds of invincibility and you go through everything. It also barely has any bosses, and the one boss it does have, the one truth, it's 9 enemies that you've seen earlier in the game made 300% bigger, and one of them actually takes damage while the rest are fake. Awesome. Great fucking boss, guys. Would you like to try again? Maybe come up with a concept that isn't plainly a waste of my time? 4 also has the burping nurses. Why do the nurses burp? And repeatedly so when you knock them down the stairs. Like, when I replayed this game, and I tried not to do any of the speedrun glitches for the recent stream playthrough, I still hated it. I still hated it. Like, it was just about bearable. Here's a confession. I've actually only ever been able to finish Silent Hill 4 on easy mode. I've never been able to bring myself to complete it on a higher difficulty level. Because I just can't, man. I can't deal with 4. I cannot be dealing with this. I cannot be dealing with the 4 video game. I do not enjoy it at all. This is the controversial one in that I actually rate Silent Hill 4 a lot lower than like half of the Western games. Even though I think it's more recognizable as a game in its own series, I also think it's like worse. Silent Hill the Arcade. I have quite a lot of opinions about arcade rail shooters actually, because I've played many of them. Silent Hill Arcade is it's one of them. It's one of the arcade rail shooters. It's clearly like bodged together out of existing assets from Silent Hill 2 and 3, so that makes it feel a bit cheap out the gate. There's not much in the way of like interesting visual flair, and gameplay-wise, it's kinda plain. Silent Hill the Arcade is a game that exists. It is playable, it's fine, but it's not especially remarkable inside of like the light gun shooter genre. It's okay. It leans very easy, incidentally. Here's the thing about Silent Hill the Arcade. It's like twice as long as a regular rail shooter. Like, the House of the Dead games are about 30 to 40 minutes long. Silent Hill the Arcade is over an hour. Why is it so long? The game is long as fuck. Like, this is actually like a serious knock against it, because you're meant to play those games standing up in an arcade, like in one sitting. And that's like sort of prohibitive because the game's long as balls. To feed coins, it's not hard enough for that. That's the thing, Silent Hill the Arcade is actually, like, relatively easy, all things told. I 1cc'd it, like, no bother. And the scoring system isn't, like, that interesting to pursue either, because it's just kind of a scaling combo amount based on how many hits you got, which encourages you to, like, repeatedly kick corpses over and over again. But there's a limit to how much you can do it before the corpse is deemed an invalid target, and then it stops existing, and that gets really annoying to work with. Even if you try to dig into it on that deeper level, it's still not that great, but, like, it's fine. People tend to view Silent Hill the Arcade like it's a big betrayal because it's a kind of silly spin-off game. You know, like, oh, Silent Hill's a serious series. It shouldn't have a rail shooter spin-off that's, like, kind of dumb. And I'm just like, why not? Why not have a rail shooter that's, like, kind of dumb? I don't think there's anything, like, conceptually wrong-headed about it. I even think it's kind of cute the way it spins off from an obscure detail in Silent Hill 2. Even though the plot makes no sense and is... Silent Hill the Arcade was made well past the point where people knew better about video game voice acting, so I can only assume that the actors were directed to sound like aliens on purpose. Because some of the line deliveries in this game are deranged. Silent Hill Origins. I actually think over the course of my casual playthrough, my opinion about Origins got worse. I used to think Origins was, like, alright, at least... But there's a lot that annoys me about it, the more I've actually come to play it. Getting interrupted by enemy, like, QTE events that don't actually have to hit you to start a QTE, they just kind of, you need to be, like, standing within the same square mile as the enemy trying to do it. That's really annoying. The story is completely incoherent, like, it bills itself as a prequel to Silent Hill 1, but it can't possibly be a prequel because none of that, it doesn't match properly. Like, it bases itself on a flawed understanding of what is even happening in Silent Hill 1, and Travis is also a really boring character. So that doesn't help very much. There's also the fact that, like, the second area of the game, the sanitarium, is unnecessarily big, weirdly poorly lit, and very confusing to get around. But at the same time, right, Origins, to me, feels like the last game that's recognizably Silent Hill, because it's still, like, it's not quite tank controls anymore, but it's still, like, a semi-fixed camera angle perspective. Like, it feels like a classic survival horror game still. Like, gameplay-wise, it still has classic survival horror sensibility about it. It's a game where you are in a space and you are often running around trying to unlock a bunch of doors, collecting keys, solving puzzles. Like, it has good survival horror flow. I also think it gets a poor rap, like a poorer rap than it should, because a lot of people experience it through the PlayStation 2 version, and it's not a PlayStation 2 game. For one thing, that port's bad. For two, Silent Hill Origins is intended for the form factor of the PlayStation Portable, which is about this. This is my phone. This is smaller than a PlayStation Portable, but, like, it's meant to be played in, like, relatively short bursts, so the fact it's a smaller game is more acceptable in that context. But there are still many problems with it even within that context. I didn't hate playing through it again for the replay that we did for the stream, but I definitely feel like my opinion of it got a bit worse somehow. Like, I don't hate it, but it's just about, like, I would say this is sort of like my water level. Like, anything below this is something I find borderline intolerable. I'm gonna go with C. I'm going with C for Silent Hill Origins. I feel like anything, like, below Origins is like a game I find almost completely insufferable. I don't hate the production, though, of Origins. Like, it's a humble game. The humble handheld experience, you know? We don't get those so much anymore. Speaking of below Origins, Silent Hill Homecoming. This might be the worst video game anyone has ever made. Homecoming is really fucking bad. There is basically nothing I like about it. Homecoming, in fact, honestly, I really don't like playing Silent Hill 4 either, but putting Silent Hill 4 in the same tier as Homecoming actually feels wrong. Like, I find Silent Hill 4 almost intolerable, like, to play, but Silent Hill Homecoming, like, shouldn't exist. This game should have been cancelled. This game is so dreadful. It is, like, it's so difficult to even play. It controls badly. The act of shooting the gun is weirdly difficult in Silent Hill Homecoming. All the bosses are terrible. They all have, like, fucked up patterns, dumbass hitboxes, and all of them have really unclear progression where you need to walk up and do, like, a QTE at some point. All the enemies are frustrating to fight. The story doesn't make any sense. It's really difficult to even see what you're doing sometimes because the color palette is so gray and drab and terrible. It's a game that's malfunctioning almost constantly. It takes ages to load. It runs poorly at almost every opportunity. Homecoming is trash. It should never have come out. Like, this is a game that's so bad. Like, Silent Hill 4 is a game I don't like, but I don't think it's, like, quite so bad that I would say, oh man, Silent Hill 4 shouldn't have been made. Like, it shouldn't have come out. Like, I don't care for it, but I see the vision, you know? There's a vision there. I can sort of see the better version of Silent Hill 4 that could have existed in another universe. Silent Hill Homecoming, completely fucking irredeemable in every way. Like, it's so wrong-headed on concept level. Even the aesthetic of Homecoming is like a miss, a swing and a miss, because it's copying so heavily off of the shitty Silent Hill movie for some reason. I hate this game tremendously. This is easily the worst game in the franchise, bar basically none. It's so dire. Like, I am an appreciator and an enjoyer of the bad video games, right? But even I can find almost nothing enjoyable and redeemable about Homecoming. I fucking hate this game. Fucking hate Homecoming. Fuck it. Fuck it so hard. Awful. It is a game where every time I have been playing it, I feel like I'm being drilled in the skull constantly. There's a pressure in my head that just won't release. The gradual stress builds up. No good. Boo. Fuck Homecoming. Fuck Homecoming. Fuck everyone involved in its creation. Fuck you all. I hate Homecoming. Rubbish. Rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. To the Shadow Realm. Silent Hill Shattered Memories. This is a game where my opinion of it has actually improved quite a bit from the first time I played it. If you ask me my opinion on Shattered Memories after my very first playthrough on the Wii version, I'd have put it like here. But since I've had more time to play it multiple times and really like take it in on a version where I'm not flailing my hands around constantly like an asshole, it turns out I don't hate Shattered Memories. It turns out I hate the Wii. B for Shattered Memories. I've grown to appreciate this one more over repeated playthrough, especially my last playthrough. I found a lot that was likable about it in the end. I feel like it's the Western Silent Hill with the strongest sense of its own identity. I think that's how I've described it before. But it is. I stick to that. I feel like it's the Western Silent Hill that has the clearest idea of what the fuck it's even trying to be. Now, I have quibbles with what it wanted to be. I don't really think the psychological profiling gimmick is that effective in practice. But it's giving it a good try, and I also think the environmental detail in Shattered Memories is one of the best in the series, actually. This I found surprising, but if you actually, like, look around the environment and, like, really try to take in the space, if you're the kind of person who likes to walk around and look at stuff, Shattered Memories will give you a lot of things to walk around and look at. The environments are very dense with detail, there's a lot you can see. Many, like, posters have text that is readable, like it's not just blurry nonsense or lorem ipsum. You can look at a poster and see the words. You might even be able to get a phone number you can call. There's a lot going on. It's a surprisingly dense game for what it is. I've grown to appreciate that aspect of it a bit more over multiple playthroughs. It's the environmental design of it, honestly quite good. I respect the level of craftsmanship that did go into that. It might have taken me until, like, playthrough 5 to realize it, but I did get there eventually. Now, in terms of the actual core ludic interactions in Shattered Memories, it's a little toothless, I guess. It's derisively, this might be what we call a walking simulator in the business. There's, like, maybe 3 puzzles in the whole game, and when you're doing, like, the chase segments, it's just kind of run away from the dudes, and it's mostly just luck. Like, are they in your way? Well, sucks to be you, I guess. There's not a lot you can really do to be, like, clever about it. So that's sort of unfortunate. I feel like it would have benefited from, I don't know, something to make those sections feel more like I'm playing a game. They feel very non-interactive, despite them being, like, the core gameplay loop. Like, you can't really do anything with the enemies. I don't know. I'd have a hard time conceiving of what the better version of that would look like, but they don't feel like I'm not very engaged when doing them, like, especially not in a speedrun either. Where it's just kind of like knowing the route, you know? But scratching around the maze is not that compelling, and when you're in the maze as well, there's not a lot to look at, which takes away the game's biggest strength, which is that it's got pretty good environments, actually. I find it very funny as well. I'm more partial to the PlayStation 2 port. The people who made Shattered Memories hate the PlayStation 2 port. They're like, it only exists because we contractually had to make it, but, like, the intention of the game is it was made for the Wii. And I get why I know why they're like that. It's because, like, the Wii is the slightly more powerful platform, and the game, like, does, as I've said, it relies very heavily on its, like, environmental detail for it. So I understand why they would want those environments to be presented with, like, the strongest hardware that was made available to them in the form of the Wii. The problem is that then you have to deal with the Wii controls, which I hate. I can't deal with it, man. Having to, like, I could never get shoving a cabinet over to work properly, like, ever. It was really frustrating. I would recommend the PlayStation 2 version instead. It's not that much of a downgrade. It's really not. You guys can rest assured that the PlayStation 2 version, it's not that bad. I get why the game's own developers aren't, like, that keen on it, but it's not that bad. I think they exaggerate somewhat. Now, on another note, another game you may be surprised to learn that my opinion of has actually improved over the last times I've played it. Silent Hill Downpour. Now, we make fun of this as a speedrun because it's about an hour and a half of not actually doing anything. But the last time I played this game for the stream casually, I thought it was alright. I don't know if I want to, like, B still might be a bit high for my liking, but I come to see what its vision was. Like, before, I was like, what was it trying to do? What was it getting at? What's the idea here? But over the last time I played it, I feel like I understand more what the goal was, what its vision was, what it was trying to get at. It came out in a time. I feel like I'm gonna go with C on this one. B's looking real funny over here as a tier. Yeah, I feel like it came out at a time where it was trying to find like a new identity for Silent Hill and for survival horror in general. It says a lot that I feel like Downpour thought its biggest competition was Assassin's Creed. It was trying to come up with like, how can we make a more open environment and open structure work in a survival horror format? And the answer to that question is The Evil Within 2. It's not Downpour. But they tried. I sort of have a better idea of what it was they were even angling at. And once you view it through that lens, it's like easier to appreciate more what it was trying to do. However, there are many problems with that structure. For one thing, all of the individual side quests, they're not great. How many people like stopped watching during the bank side quest where it just played a really loud, high-pitched alarm the entire time? Riveting stuff going on there. And also, Silent Hill Downpour might have the worst environments outside of Homecoming. It might have the worst environments in the series this side of Homecoming. There is so goddamn much repeated asset use in Downpour. There are points, like, you see dirty windows, desks with 2 pencils angled at like a 45 degree to the top right, so frequently across that game. None of the individual environments stand out.
67 months of the worst environment.
Whoa!
God, streamer, why do you do this to us?
I don't know, why do I do this to you? The worst environments. Yeah, Downpour has probably the worst environments. There's just nothing fun to look at in Downpour at all. There's nothing interesting to look at. None of the interiors tell a story. They just feel like rooms where the prefab assets have been rearranged to feign the illusion of difference for just long enough. But there's nothing, if you actually start to try to like look at all the individual objects and take in the scene, there's nothing to see, man. It's such a drab game to look at, unfortunately. Combat's also a bit of an ass in Downpour. It's not quite as bad as I remembered it being, but it's very sort of like procedural. Like, it follows the motions. You go, do a couple of attacks, block, do a couple of attacks, and then block, and like repeat this rhythm. You know, always repeat this rhythm. You can get through it. It's not like a massive obstacle, but it's not quite, every enemy feels the same to fight, I think is the biggest issue going on there. I never feel like you have to do anything different for any of them. They're all just kind of like, they hit you differently, but you don't hit them differently. But there is some fun to be had in, like, exploring Silent Hill truly on your own terms, and, like, I actually think it's a concept that a certain other game would eventually realize in a fashion that's a bit more, that feels more well realized. But Downpour is trying. Blessed it tried. It didn't do a very good job, but blessed it tried. I feel kinder towards Downpour for some reason. I don't know why. I don't have a lot to say in its defense. I'm not like, clearly the C ranking feels appropriate. Like, I don't have much to say in its favor. Should also be noted, story's pretty shit. It doesn't make any sense, really. Downpour has possibly my least favorite interpretation of the nature of Silent Hill, and this is bordering on, like, the fandom type thing, ooh, the fandom stuff, but Downpour takes the interpretation of, like, Silent Hill as a force that purposefully meddles in people's lives to get them to realize some kind of truth about themselves or whatever. It really takes that to its logical extreme, and I hate it. It's not scary, it's not atmospheric, I don't think it's an interesting direction for the series. I think it's just kind of corny. Even the other Western Silent Hill games don't quite go full tilt in that direction. Like, Silent Hill Origins is still very much like repeating Silent Hill 2 in terms of like, ooh, Travis needs to remember something about his past. But in Silent Hill Downpour, Murphy literally fucking hears voices in his head telling him that he must face up to the truth. And it's like, man, that's lame. You're lame. You are so lame, bro. Like, come on. Come on. You can't do this to me. You gotta be a little more subtle about it. God damn. So yeah, not a fan of Downpour's interpretation of how Silent Hill even works. However, Murphy's streams are very funny. So that earns it at least one extra point. Book of Memes. This is a D. This is definitely a D. It is a dungeon crawler game. This is a game where it's kind of wrong-headed on concept level. Maybe a silly dungeon crawler spin-off isn't a terrible idea, but it's like such a middling one. It's such a middling one. A lot of the core information of how to even play it is obscured in ways that make absolutely no sense. But overall, I find it like I can shut my brain off and get through it at least. This is my favorite song from Silent Hill 4, by the way. Which is, it's interesting that, like, Silent Hill 4 is still so low down. But yeah, no, I find Book of Memories to be slightly more playable than 4. Like, 4 makes me angry, is the thing. Silent Hill Book of Memories doesn't make me angry, but also it makes me feel, like, numb. When I play Book of Memories, my brain is emitting static constantly. Like, there's just nothing going on upstairs. When I'm playing Book of Memories... That's what me playing Book of Memories is like. That's like the rough emotional state that I'm in. Whereas when I'm playing Silent Hill 4 and Homecoming, I want to eat the disc. That's like the difference between these two, is that like Book of Memories is like bad, it's not good. It is a middling dungeon crawler with a Silent Hill theme pasted over it, and there's a lot that's also wrong with it even internal to that. Like, again, the story is nonsense. The story is weirdly petulant, for lack of a... Silent Hill Book of Memories story is so puzzling, even, like, among the greater Silent Hill pantheon, because it concerns itself with such trivial horse shit. What is the first thing you do in Book of Memories, right? I think it's like you fight your coworker for a promotion at your job, and it's like, that is... that's so lame? Silent Hill? And, you know, the ultimate outcome of that storyline is either your coworker gets transferred to another store and gets a promotion there, but the bad ending is that your coworker gets in an accident and can't get the promotion, so you get it instead. It's like, this is this is lame. And that's Book of Memes. It's not great. You don't need to go out of your way to get a device that can play Vita games to play it, like I did. This is the only Vita game I own. I own one Vita game, and it's Silent Hill Book of Memories. Silent Hill Ascension, that's a Homecoming, baby. Ascension that belongs in the Homecoming tier. Ascension is not a video game. It's probably AI generated. That's not a thing that Homecoming, this is the tier of things that shouldn't exist. Homecoming shouldn't exist. Ascension shouldn't exist. Not a video game. A hastily cobbled together, probably AI generated nonsense script, makes no sense. The less said about Ascension, the better. Why was this a thing? Who the fuck tricked Konami into greenlighting this shit? What is wrong with us as a species? Awful production. These two should not have been released. These two shouldn't have come out. Both Silent Hill Homecoming and Ascension occupy the, like, this should have been shit canned for very different reasons, but they definitely both, like, shouldn't exist. So I'm going to move on from that. Fuck Ascension. It's not a game. Doesn't even really belong on this tier list. Short Message. I feel kinder towards Short Message than when I first played it, because I now understand why it exists the way that it does. But it's still kind of a D-tier video game, unfortunately. I feel kinder towards it, but that doesn't make it good. Silent Hill: The Short Message was intended to be a full game at some point or another. We found this out because of a combination of developer interviews and, like, leaked presentation stuff. But The Short Message was supposed to be a full release at some point, and The Short Message was supposed to be a teaser demo at some point. Because we've seen on, like, Konami's, like, leaked presentation slides that they had a Silent Hill narrative experience with demo releasing in 2024, and that would have been The Short Message. But at some point, the full thing got shit-canned, but they still let them release what they had as The Short Message, and that's why The Short Message is what it is. That's why it feels like it's covering too much ground too quickly despite being so short. It's because they, like, smushed a much larger game into as little a space as they possibly could just to get those ideas out in time, And that makes me feel a bit kinder towards it, at least, because, like, it's a game that was never really given a fair chance, I think. Doesn't make it good, but, like, alright. Alright, I understand. Things occur. Deeply unfortunate. And for what it's worth, I think Silent Hill: The Short Message has its heart in the right place. I don't think it handles its subject matter with the greatest of tact or grace in the world. It comes off as feeling a bit corny. I've used that word twice now. But it does. It comes off as... It doesn't hit with, like, emotional resonance, unfortunately. But I don't feel like it's insincere or cynical, at least. Like, it's trying to reach out to younger people about contemporary issues, social media, and social isolation, and... I've said the word social too many times. I wanted to say social anxiety. That's 3. But, like, it... Again, heart in the right place, but I'm not sure it has, like, the voice of the generation quite nailed. But then again, given how much the game had to be compressed to come out at all, maybe it was never fair to expect it to in the first place. I don't know. An unfortunate child, The Short Message is, I think. What? Something could have been. Something could have been there. They were maybe cooking something. And Short Message does have this going for it. It has good environments. That's a thing that comes up a lot when talking about Silent Hill games. Short Message has a lot of stuff to look at. There's a lot of nice grime. There's a lot of nice mold to look at. But there is a lot of, like, stuff to look through. Individual rooms in the apartment complex do tell a story. So there's something going on there. There's not nothing to The Short Message, but because it's so short and because its development was so, like, fucked, it got fucked over, frankly. It doesn't come out as much of a noteworthy title, unfortunately. But it's free, and, like, its heart's in the right place, so I don't, like, hate it. I have no, like, hate in my heart for The Short Message. The first time I played it, I was just confused why it even existed, but since I was able to satisfactorily, like, answer that question, my heart has softened towards it somewhat. I'm like, you know what? You're alright. I don't mind you so much. Still not great, but you're alright. And this is probably the one that most divides people strongly. Silent Hill 2 Remake. If you try to imply you are anything less than thrilled with how this came out, you are derided as a purist. But all the same, if you think it's a fantastic remake, people like me will take the piss out of you because you are a shallow baby who cannot enjoy true art for what it is if it doesn't have the highest polygon count. B. It's alright. It's definitely better than these 4. I have no difficulty with that placement. I think this is actually a game where my opinion of it got slightly worse over time. If you asked me directly after, like, my first couple of playthroughs, I probably would have put it in A. But, I don't think it holds up, like, to the scrutiny of multiple playthroughs that well, unfortunately. It's a really bloated production. But it's not, like, the worst game. Like, definitely it's better than the vast majority of, the Silent Hill library. The thing about Silent Hill 2, right, so, like, the nuts and bolts of it, the environments are really nice to look around. It does the concept of, like, an open Silent Hill to wander around better than Downpour does, that's for sure. Even though it doesn't really have side quests, but it does the concept better. Like, you can spend a lot of time nosing around Silent Hill doing a fat load of nothing, and have a good time, because there's lots to see. Where I think Silent Hill 2 falls apart, Silent Hill 2 Remake falls apart, is the pacing, and some of the edits made to the game's structure just bewilder me. And also the combat gets intensely repetitive over the long term, and there's a couple of problems with that core combat. The main thing that bugs me about 2 Remake is that they took Silent Hill 2, which is a game that is about 6 to 10 hours long, depending on how fast you are, and made it 14 to 20. And it doesn't need to be 14 to 20 hours long. There is no good reason for this game to take 20 fucking hours to complete on a casual playthrough. It doesn't need that length. The only reason it's that long is that they have expanded every area in ways that they did not need to and don't really make sense, just to make it longer so they could charge $70 for it, because it's a $70 game. That's the only reason the game is as long as it is, and that's a really lame reason to inflate the runtime. I made a whole video discussing my feelings about Silent Hill 2. The thing I ended up going with for Silent Hill 2 Remake, the clickbait to get people clicking on the video, was I called it pretty good but forgettable, and I stick to that. It's pretty good. Like, it's definitely a functional third-person shooter. The other thing that makes me sad about Silent Hill 2 Remake is that it takes a game that in its time was very distinct among its peers. Like Silent Hill 2 and Resident Evil were very easy to tell apart. Like classic Resident Evil and Silent Hill were games you could easily tell apart from a single screenshot. Whereas Silent Hill 2 Remake, I have seen multiple people go into like Igdisis' streams and ask what Resident Evil game he's playing. I've seen this happen, and they're not taking the piss. I saw it happen to Igdisis, it happened to me, it happened to, who was the third guy I saw this happen to? People on Twitch can't tell this fucking game apart from a Resident Evil game because it looks exactly like 2 and 3 make. And 4 make to a lesser extent. And that's like really disappointing. That's a very disappointing thing about Silent Hill 2 Remake. It took a game that in its original time was very distinct from its peers in the survival horror space. Resident Evil, Silent Hill, throw in like, I don't know, Fatal Frame? Sure, why not? Someone said it in chat. So Fatal Frame, all very, despite all being survival horror games, all very distinct games and had very distinct like art styles. You could tell them apart easily from a single picture. No one ever confuses Silent Hill 2 the original for Resident Evil 2. For one thing, they're on different platforms, but no one ever confuses Silent Hill 2 with like a Resident Evil game that came out on the same platform, like Outbreak or Code Veronica. It doesn't happen. They look different. They have different sensibilities. They have different soundscapes. Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 2 Remake, people do confuse this game for a Resident Evil 1 all the fucking time on this website. All the time. And that to me says a lot. Says a lot to me that people can't visually tell it apart at a glance, because they made it play pretty much exactly the bloody same as one of the Resident Evil remakes, combined with entirely too slow a walk speed and slightly frustrating combat. Although I'll say this for Silent Hill 2 compared to Remake, at least if you shoot an enemy in Silent Hill 2 Remake, they take fucking damage. This is my bitterness about 2 make resurfacing. Although, the trade-off is that in Silent Hill 2 Remake, if an enemy winds up an attack within the same postcode as you, you have to assume it's going to hit you, because all enemies, like, slide towards you when they're attacking, they autocorrect. I got a really good shot of that in my video about the game. And I hate that. I hate that about Silent Hill 2 Remake. The fact that enemies, like, autocorrect and slide towards you. There's a bit of autocorrection going on for James, too. It sucks. I feel like that thing needs to be removed out of every video game that it's in. I'm gonna go ahead and blame God of War for causing people to think that constitutes good game design, but it's actually poison to action games, because it makes it impossible to, like, gauge the distance. You know, if you think, oh, I'm standing here, but the enemy is there. If they attack, they will miss. No, they won't. They'll slide towards you and hit you. You can't do spacing. And that changes the emphasis of the combat dramatically, because Silent Hill games, survival horror games especially, are traditionally games of positioning, games of spacing. They are about standing in the right place, so that you don't get hit in the face when an enemy tries to attack you. That's why guns are a valuable resource in that kind of game, because they let you attack from a distance, so you can stand out of the effective range of your opponent while shooting them in the face with a gun. That doesn't work so much in Silent Hill 2 Remake. Like, it kinda does. There are limits on the range, of course. But it doesn't help as much, because enemies are reasonably quick. They pursue from surprisingly far away, and if they are even within, like, the same postcode as you, their melee attacks are gonna snap to you. So, managing bullets as a means of, like, staying out of harm's way is de-emphasized. The ability to dodge and gain a shit ton of free invincibility feels like a real band-aid solution to this problem. You know, speaking of the things it actually does do well, though, the environments are nice to look at, even though the game runs like shit and still hasn't been fixed. Fix your fucking game, Bloober. And they mostly had the restraint to, like, not fuck up the story. Mostly. I'm a bit perplexed by some of the added cutscenes that I don't think add anything of value to the story. There's at least one added cutscene that I hate. I hate the garden scene with Maria. But the core emotional thrust of Silent Hill 2 has been left intact with a remarkable amount of restraint. Like, the story of Silent Hill 2 is still good. It's still a good story, and it's still reasonably well told. So I can see someone playing Silent Hill 2 Remake for the first time and being moved by it. I could see that happening. I don't think they besmirched it so badly that it would prevent a new player from enjoying and seeing what made Silent Hill 2 so special to a large number of people. But at the same time, I also don't quite feel like they would get the same experience. I mean, that's the thing that happens when you make a game that's a completely different video game with the same name. You're always going to be getting a different experience. But nevertheless, I still don't dislike playing Silent Hill 2 Remake, especially relative to a lot of the Western games. I definitely feel like putting it above Downpour and Origins is that feels fine. That feels fine to me. Even though I sort of feel like it's a very cynical production. But it came out, mostly alright, is the thing. But I definitely have problems with it. I have misgivings. That's for sure. And it feels difficult to kind of, court that position that I think Silent Hill 2 Remake is decent, but not, outstanding, really. I'd give it, maybe a 7.5 out of 10. Maybe an 8 if I was in a good mood. Yep, that's the Silent Hill games ranked in the totality. That is how I feel about the Silent Hill games. Hopefully you see my rationale for each one of these individually. You probably disagree with some of them. I imagine there's going to be a bunch of people who are not tremendously happy with my opinions about Silent Hill 4 and 2 Remake. But that's how I feel. I've played Silent Hill 2 Remake for 90 hours or something. I get to complain. Let me know what your opinions are. Like, comment, and subscribe. Woo! I'm fucking out of here.